Hello, welcome to Longshot Larry's Sports Astrology. Today's our final video on the series and game charts. We're wrapping up the Frawley Method and summarising what we've learnt so far. With the Frawley Method, I haven't covered everything in the videos. I suggest you get a copy of the book if you're into some of the finer details, but I've covered the main points. I get quite a few questions about why this Frawley Method doesn't work, especially in regular season games all the time. There's a couple of things you need to take into account. Number one, it's best if the games start a variety of times. That's going to make it a bit easier. And if you have a variety of locations that are fairly spread out, that is beneficial. So the NFL, for example, on a Sunday has lots of games kicking off at 1 o'clock, but they're spread all across the eastern seaboard of the United States and usually the central part of the United States, so you get big difference in charts. The Premier League, for example, a lot of games kick off at the same time. However, they're in a relatively small area, so there's not much difference in the chart, so not very useful in that case. To make it more useful, I look for three indicators that are pointing to the same outcome. Either 3 for the favourite or 3 for the underdog, and I call that FM plus 3. It does result, in my opinion, a better chance of being right. It's not 100%, but you have a better chance. So let's look at some examples. First chart is an AFL game, Gold Coast against Carlton. Carlton are favourites here. What have we got going on here? We can see that Mercury is in charge of the 1st and 10th house. We'll form an exact square to Pluto in 13 minutes of arc, and will be exact during the game. I found that Lords of the 1st or 7th in a positive aspect to Pluto help the team. In a challenging aspect like a square, they are a bit of a negative. So that's one for the underdog. We've got Jupiter as Lord of the 7th in the 7th within 2 degrees. That's another one for the underdog. The Antiska positions, you can see that the Antiska of the part of fortune is in the 4th house within 3 degrees. That's another one for the underdog. And the final aspect the moon will make is a sextile to the Antiska of Jupiter, just over 5 degrees, Lord of the 7th. That's a very weak indicator, but it is all lining up for the underdog here, and Gold Coast did get the upset win, 92 to 62. Next chart, another AFL game, Sydney at home to North Melbourne. No one gave North Melbourne a hope here. Sydney red hot favourite. We've got Uranus is applying within 1 degree to an opposition to the part of fortune. That's one for the underdog. The moon will go and square the sun in 1 degree. Sun's in charge of the 1st house. That's one for the favourite. However, the final aspect will be a trine to Jupiter within 5 degrees. Jupiter's lord of the 4th. That's another one for the underdog. You can also see on the Antiska of the part of fortune here is in the 7th. So it's 3 for the underdog here. North Melbourne went very close, but Sydney got them in the end. North Melbourne did play a lot better than expected, so it didn't work in that case. However, it did strengthen North Melbourne. Next one, rugby league game, Penrith at home to Newcastle. Penrith are the favourites. Straight away here you can see that Jupiter is down within 2 degrees, applying to the IC. Lord of the 1st, that's a strong one for the favourite. And you've also got the moon up here applying to the MC very close. That is another one for the favourite. 2 strong ones for the favourite there. The moon's only aspect is going to be a sextile to Mars within 1 degree before it changes signs. Mars is the lord of the part of fortune, so that's another one for the favourite, a weak one. And the Antiska positions, you can also see the Antiska of the Sun, which is Lord of the 10th, degree or so away from the 10th house cusp. That's another one for the favourite. So you've got 4 for the favourites, and Penrith won that one quite easily. Next one is Carolina away to the New York Giants in the NFL, a regular season game. So the moon is going to oppose Venus in 2 degrees, which is Lord of the 4th. That's the final aspect. That's one for the underdogs. Antiska positions, we've got the Antiska of Venus, which is Lord of the 4th, very close to the ascendant here, above the ascendant, within 1 degree. That's quite strong for the underdog. And the last one is we've got the Antiska of the moon, also in the 7th, representing the underdog New York Giants, and they won this one quite convincingly, 25 to 3. Now, this one there wasn't much difference. Carolina were warm favourites, 3 points, so it's not much in it. So you do need to take that into account when you're looking at these charts, or how big a difference in the teams there is. Next one's an AFL game, Western Bulldogs at home to Port Adelaide. This is actually a semi-finals sort of game. You can see that Jupiter is Lord of the first house here. It is applying just over a degree to an opposition to the part of fortune, and it will make it before it turns direct, so that's 1 for the underdog. You'll also see that the Sun is within 2 degrees of the part of fortune. That's called combust, and the part of fortune does represent the favourite, so that's another one for the underdog. Final thing is that the Moon, what's its final aspect, will be a square to the antiska of the part of fortune in 3 degrees. That's another one for the underdog. So you got 3 for the underdog there. Port Adelaide did get the upset win and an absolute nail biter, 66-64. Next one, I've used this chart before. Melbourne at home to Hawthorn. Hawthorn given no chance. Melbourne red hot favourites. So Mars is in the 7th house. It's the Lord of the 10th within 2 degrees. That's 1 for the underdogs. The Moon, the only aspect the Moon's going to make is a square to the Sun, which is the Lord of the 7th. That's another one for the underdogs. And looking at the antiska, Saturn is in charge of Melbourne here. It's Lord of the 1st. It is opposing the antiska of the part of fortune here within 2 degrees, and it will make it before it turns direct. So that's 3 for the underdog. Now this one actually ended up in a draw, but still a very unexpected result, and Hawthorn played a lot better than the experts predicted. Next one, rugby league game. Manly versus the Gold Coast. Gold Coast are the favourites here. Manly were playing terrible up till this point. Mercury is not quite within 2 degrees of the Sun. It's pretty close. You could call that combust, and Mercury does rule the 10th house. And the 1st house may be 1 for the underdog there. The Moon's interesting here. It will go and trine Jupiter, Lord of the 7th, in 4 degrees. That's very good for the underdog. However, its final aspect is actually going to be a trine to the part of fortune. That swings back to the favourite. You do have Mars exactly trine Jupiter. Now, I read that these exact aspects, a favourable one like that, Jupiter is the Lord of the 7th here. I would give that one to the underdog. And in antiska positions, the antiska of the part of fortune is just within that 3 degree orb of the descendant. So that's 3 for the underdog there, and Manly actually won very well. I've talked about this chart before, and I will mention again when we go into team charts. It's a very good chart to learn from this chart. Final chart, AFL game once again, Greater Western Sydney up against St Kilda. St Kilda are the favourites. So straight away you can see that Saturn is close to the IC here and in charge of the IC. So that's Saturn, the Lord of the 4th, applying to the IC. That's 1 for the underdogs. The Moon will go and trine Mercury, 3 degrees away. Final aspect, Mercury rules the descendant here, or the 7th. So that's 1 for the underdogs once again. You'll see that Mercury is within 2 degrees of the North Node. Now Frawley mentions that's 1 for the underdog in this case. I haven't found that to be that reliable, I must admit, but that's another one for the underdog. So we got 3 for the underdogs. Unfortunately, it didn't work in this case. St Kilda still won, 77-60. So it unfortunately doesn't work all the time. Okay, so that completes our series on game charts. So we've covered planets on angles, exact aspects forming during the match and how the Moon triggers those, planetary stations, especially the big hitters Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Pluto are very important, and I've been through the basics of the Frawley Method and how I filter them out with the Frawley Method +3. So in the next series of videos we're going to be looking at the charts for the teams, which charts you use to represent the team, how they line up to those 4 conditions we've already talked about is very important, and that's what I use to try and improve my accuracy. Thanks very much for watching. We hope to see you in the next series. If you've got any questions, just put them in a comment. So please like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.